The following story is a camp counselor's account of an incident that took place at Camp Echo Pines in 1984.
It started with Eli drifting past the dock. We always warned the campers not to go beyond the buoy line, but kids don't always listen. That afternoon was especially hot, one of those days where even the pine trees seemed to sweat. And I was on lifeguard duty, squinting under the sun with a whistle in my mouth and sunscreen dripping into my eyes. That's when I saw him. Eli, a quiet kid from Cabin 7, was moving steadily toward the middle of the lake, way past the safety line. I called out. No response. He wasn't splashing, wasn't panicking, just paddling forward, slow and glass-eyed like he was in a trance. I blew the whistle twice, sharp. The other kids paused, watching. Still nothing from Eli. That's when I dove in. The swim felt longer than it should have. The water out there is colder, deeper. I shouted his name between strokes, but he kept going, slipping out of reach. Finally, maybe 30 feet past the buoy, he stopped. Just floated. Face half submerged, staring downward. I reached him, grabbed his shoulder, and he jerked up like he'd been woken up from a nightmare. Eli, are you okay? His eyes locked on mine. He opened his mouth, but only a whisper came out. It's still down there, with the lights on. We got him back to shore. He didn't speak again for hours. That night, I walked him to the infirmary, trying to talk gently, make sense of it. He wouldn't make eye contact, just kept fidgeting, repeating that one sentence under his breath. It's still down there. I mentioned it to Rick, the old groundskeeper, later that night when we were cleaning up the canoes. He paused, leaned on his rake, and gave me this look like I'd just said something sacred. You ever hear about old Camp Echo? He asked. I hadn't. Before this one, there was another site, he said, down in the valley. They closed it back in the 50s. Some say it burned down. Others say the dam they built to flood the new lake just covered it. I stared at him. You're saying there's a cabin under the lake? Not just one, Rick said. The whole old grounds, bunkhouses, mess hall. Some say the walls are still standing down there. And some nights, lights. He was dead serious. The next night, I couldn't shake it. I stayed up after lights out, watching the moon glide across the lake. Around midnight, I made up my mind. I took a canoe and paddled out, flashlight and snorkel gear in hand. The lake was glass, no wind. The world was silent except for the lapping of my paddle. I anchored near the buoy and slipped into the water. The moment my body hit, the air left me. It was colder than before, numbing cold. I switched on the flashlight and dove. At about 10 feet, I saw something that stopped me cold. A roofline. A rotted wooden A-frame nestled into the muddy lake bed. Algae-covered shingles, moss clinging to support beams. I swam closer. Then I saw the windows. Real glass panes, intact despite decades underwater. Behind one, light, faint, yellowish, pulsing. I blinked, thinking it was my flashlight reflecting. But then the glow moved. Something shifted behind the glass. I froze. A face pressed up against it. Pale, bloated, almost human. Its mouth was open, eyes black. Its hands were pressed on either side of the window, fingers long and warped. And then, unmistakably, it smiled. I kicked away so hard I nearly dropped the flashlight. I broke the surface, gasping, scrambled back into the canoe, heart pounding like I'd just outrun a bear. The smile wasn't one of welcome, it was recognition, like it knew me. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't tell anyone at first, just kept my eye on Eli. He wouldn't go near the water anymore. At arts and crafts, he started drawing the same thing over and over, a rectangle with 4 tiny windows and a glow inside. Sometimes he'd add a face. Eventually, the camp director got wind of it. They thought maybe he was traumatized from swimming too far. They sent him home early. 2 days later, a maintenance crew came through to inspect the docks and shoreline. They were supposed to drain part of the lake for some kind of foundation repair. When they did, they found it. Beneath the lower basin, under layers of silt and moss, lay what was left of old Camp Echo. A bunkhouse, still upright, a mess hall foundation, collapsed roofs and bent metal bunks. They pulled up relics, rusted utensils, old badges, warped nameplates. Then came the worst part. In one of the bunkhouses, they found skeletal remains. 7 small beds. One of them still had a child's skeleton chained to it. No one knew what to say. The director claimed it was an archaeological discovery, said nothing to the kids. A few parents pulled their children out early. Some of the counselors did too. I stayed. Why? Maybe I needed to know more. Maybe I felt guilty for letting Eli swim out there. The nightmares started soon after. Drowning dreams. The face behind the window, that smile. One night, I woke up gasping, water dripping from my nose. I hadn't been near the lake in days. The worst was the whispering. Just before sleep, I'd hear it, barely audible. Still down there. It's been 5 years. I don't talk about it much, but last week, a friend of mine sent me a drone video someone took of Echo Pines. Apparently, the lake's been experiencing odd fluctuations. Sections of shoreline collapsing, rumors of cracks in the dam. In the background of the video, you can see something glinting under the water. A reflection, or maybe a window. Eli was right. It's still down there. And the lights are still on.
The following story is a camp counselor's account of an incident that took place at Pine Ridge Summer Camp in 1996.
It was the summer we reopened Cabin 9. Pine Ridge had seen better days. Budgets were tight, enrollment was up, and the director, Marla, was desperate to squeeze in as many campers as possible. So when she told us we'd be cleaning out Cabin 9 to use again, I didn't ask questions. I should have. Cabin 9 had been in storage for over a decade. I'd walked past it 100 times, never really thought about it much. But when we pried the doors open, something hit me immediately. The smell, damp, rotten wood, and something underneath it like rust and mildew with a metallic tang. It looked fine at first. Dusty, sure. Cobwebs in the rafters, but nothing awful. We swept it out, laid down new mattresses, threw in a couple of nightlights for the younger kids. Still, something about that place made my skin crawl. That first night, I was posted with the group assigned to Cabin 9. 3 girls, ages 9 to 11. Lexi was the quiet one, always with a book, always watching. The others were rowdier, excited, oblivious. It was just another cabin to them. Until the third night. Around 2 a.m., I was making rounds with my flashlight. The forest was still. My sneakers crunched softly on gravel as I passed cabins. Then I stopped at 9. I heard whispering, low and fast, like someone muttering urgently. I thought maybe one of the girls was having a late-night talk or a bad dream. I crept closer and peeked through the window. They were all asleep, every single one. The whispering stopped. I went inside, thinking maybe a raccoon had gotten into the cabin. I checked corners, under beds, behind trunks, nothing. The room felt colder than the others, noticeably so. My flashlight beam caught Lexi's face. Her eyes were open. I nearly dropped the light. She was lying flat on her back, staring at the ceiling, eyes wide. She whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, "It comes out when it's cold." I knelt beside her. "Lexi, what comes out?" She didn't answer. Her gaze stayed fixed on the rafters. The next morning, she wouldn't talk to anyone. One of the other girls said she'd been humming to herself for hours in the middle of the night. Another said her bed shook like something was crawling under it. I reported it to Marla, who rolled her eyes and said, "Kids are dramatic. Cabin 9 is fine." I wasn't so sure. That evening, I brought in a space heater just to break the chill. Something about the cold was wrong. It didn't matter that it was nearly 85 degrees outside. Inside that cabin, you needed a sweatshirt. Later that night, I stayed just outside their window during lights out. I was determined to get to the bottom of it. The wind had picked up. Tree branches scratched at the roof. Then I heard it. Whispers, clearer now. But they weren't coming from the girls. They were coming from under the floorboards. I pressed my ear to the cabin wall. It sounded like a conversation, but in a language I couldn't understand. Harsh syllables, fast and breathy. Then something tapped from inside, just behind the paneling. Tap, tap, tap. I jumped back. Lexi screamed. I rushed inside. The girls were sitting up in their bunks, confused and scared. Lexi pointed out at the far corner of the room. "He was standing right there," she whispered. "The tall man. He said something in my ear and it burned." I checked the corner. Nothing. But the wall was freezing cold to the touch. Ice cold in July. That night, I slept on the floor in cabin 9. The whispers didn't come back, but the silence was almost worse. I kept waking up, certain someone was watching me. The next day, I decided to investigate for real. While the kids were at the lake, I crawled under the cabin. It was damp and tight and full of spiders. But what I found made me stop breathing. Carved into the beams under Lexi's bed were dozens of overlapping circles. Some were etched deep, some faint and shallow. There was a strange symbol in the center, like an open eye surrounded by jagged lines. Beneath it was something darker, burn marks. Someone had lit a fire under this bunk. Not recently, this was old. Years, maybe, decades. But the smell lingered. I took pictures and showed them to Rick, our oldest maintenance guy. He stared at them for a long time and said, "Where'd you find these?" "Cabin 9, I told him. He went pale. "You know, they closed that cabin after a kid died there, right?" he asked. I didn't. He told me the story in a whisper, like he was afraid the walls might hear. In the mid-70s, a counselor named Jonah had run night terrors so intense they found him one morning clawing at the floor, whispering nonsense in some guttural language. A few nights later, a camper woke up screaming. They said a man stood at the end of their bed, whispering and smiling. The next day, the camper was missing. They found her in the woods, alive but unconscious, with burn marks on her arms. After that, they sealed the cabin. No one had told us, or maybe they thought it was just an old camp myth. But standing in that dark crawl space surrounded by carvings and ash, I knew it was real. I went back to Marla with everything. She told me to stop spreading rumors. She said I was creating hysteria. That night it got worse. Around 3:10 a.m., I woke up in cabin 9 to Lexi sitting upright, humming that same low tune again. The air was freezing. I turned toward the corner and I saw him, the tall man. He wasn't mist or shadow. He was real, solid. His face was long and distorted. His arms hung too low, his fingers curved inward like claws. He smiled, not with his mouth, but with his eyes, a smile that meant he belonged. He whispered into Lexi's ear, and her lips started moving. She was repeating him. Whatever language it was wrong. It made my ears hurt. I shouted. I grabbed her shoulders, shook her. "Lexi, wake up!" She gasped and collapsed into me. The tall man was gone. I pulled Lexi out of the cabin, past the other girls, who were now crying and shouting. Something slammed the cabin door behind us. By sunrise, I had packed my things. I left that day. I couldn't explain what I saw to anyone who hadn't lived it. Marla claimed Lexi had a panic episode. The cabin was closed again for maintenance. No one talks about it anymore. Lexi's parents pulled her from the camp. I heard from another counselor she doesn't speak much these days, still hums that tune sometimes. I dream about it often, the cold, the whispering, the feeling that whatever was inside that cabin never left. It just waits. Waits for the next time the door opens.
The following story is a camp counselor's account of an incident that took place at Camp Ash Hollow in 1976.
The night the kids disappeared was supposed to be the highlight of the week. Flashlight scavenger hunts were a tradition at Camp Ash Hollow. Something fun and spooky to end the day with a thrill. The kind of thing they talk about all year at school. I was 20, broke, and between semesters at community college. Camp counseling wasn't my dream job, but it paid. Ash Hollow was nestled deep in the Catskills, surrounded by miles of dense pine forest. I was in charge of Cabin 4, 10 boys, ages 8 to 10. A loud, sticky, chaotic bunch, but good kids. That night, we had everything planned. Glow sticks hidden around the old fire ring, walkie-talkies for safety, and counselors positioned around the perimeter. I gave them flashlights and released them in pairs. "Stay together," I said. "Stay on the trail, 10 minutes out, then head back." I stood by the return point, a big oak near the dining hall, checking off each kid as they came back. 8 out of 10. Ben and Caleb were missing. At first, I wasn't worried. Kids get turned around in the dark, or they stop to goof off. I radioed the other counselors. No one had seen them. I grabbed a spare flashlight and headed out with a few others. The woods were quiet. The kind of quiet that presses in on your ears and makes every twig snap sound like a gunshot. We called their names. Nothing. Then we found the flashlights, lying side by side just off the path, pointed toward a hill that dropped down into a ravine we never used. That's when the fear hit. We split up. I headed downhill, scanning the brush, calling their names. I found trampled grass. Something had moved through there recently. I followed it. At the bottom of the slope, I reached the old fire ring. No one used it anymore. It had been there since the 60s, before the new campsites were built. Just a circle of rocks and blackened ash, nearly swallowed by weeds. But that night, it looked different. The rocks had been rearranged, stacked perfectly into a ring like a ritual. Inside, a pattern drawn in ash, circles within circles, and in the center, something metal glinted. I stepped closer. It was a charm bracelet, one Ben had made that afternoon at Arts and Crafts. His name was stamped on it. I stood there, heart pounding, feeling the temperature drop around me. Then I heard it, giggling. Children's laughter, but it was wrong. Slowed down like it was being played back on a warped cassette. It echoed from everywhere and nowhere. I turned, sweeping the flashlight. Then I saw them. 4 silhouettes, standing just beyond the trees, about the right height to be kids, but not quite. They stepped forward. I thought maybe it was Ben and Caleb. Maybe they were playing a prank. But as I came into the light, My stomach flipped. Their clothes were the same. Their faces weren't. Too smooth. Eyes completely black, like polished stone. Their mouths didn't move when they spoke. "We're not lost," they said in unison. The voice wasn't human. "We were chosen." I ran. Branches slashed at my arms as I tore through the woods. I tripped once, face first into the dirt, and scrambled back up, heart in my throat. I didn't stop until I hit the gravel road and saw the floodlights from the main cabin. They found me shaking, pale, barely able to speak. Search teams combed the woods all night. Dogs, spotlights, even a helicopter by morning. Nothing. No kids, no footprints, no sign of struggle. Even the ash circle was gone by the time I led the director back. All I was left were the 2 flashlights. The official story was that Ben and Caleb got lost and wandered off. Flyers went up, news stations came out, but no one could explain why their scent disappeared at the fire ring, why their flashlights were laid so neatly, or why the bracelet I held in my hand vanished by sunrise. The camp stayed open, unbelievably. Parents kept sending their kids. Some even said I was traumatized, trying to shift blame. I couldn't make them understand what I saw. But it didn't end there. A week later, during cleanup duty, one of the counselors, Ashley, found something behind the old mess hall, tucked in a rotting log wrapped in plastic. A sketchbook. Page after page of disturbing drawings. Symbols, eyes, spirals, children with hollow faces. On the last page, a crude picture of the fire ring. Standing inside the circle were 4 dark figures. Above them, scrolled in a shaky handwriting, wrote, "We watched, we listened, we followed." The camp director confiscated it, claimed that it was a prank. I left the next day. That fall, back at school, I kept searching. I found a single newspaper clipping from 1962. 2 kids vanished from a nearby wilderness camp. Never found. The article mentioned a strange arrangement of stones near a dry creek bed, and a girl who claimed to see children with no faces. The camp shut down after that. It was called Ash Hollow. Same place, same woods. I started waking up in the middle of the night, always at 3:14 a.m. The same time I had looked at my watch the night of the disappearance. Sometimes, just before I woke, I'd hear it again. Laughter, slowed down, echoing like it was just outside my window. I haven't been back to the camp. I don't know if I ever will. But sometimes when I close my eyes, I see that ring of stones. I see the black-eyed children standing at the edge of the trees. And I know this. Ben and Caleb didn't get lost. They were taken. And whatever took them is still out there. Watching, listening, waiting.